The afternoon sun beat down on the pavement as 15-year-old Amara Jackson shifted her weight onto her crutch. She'd been waiting outside the Westview Community Center for almost 20 minutes now, and her legs were starting to ache. Physical therapy days were always the hardest. The exercises left her muscles burning, but Dr. Chen insisted they were making progress. Amara believed her, even on days like today when her cerebral palsy seemed to fight against every step. "Just 10 more minutes," she whispered to herself, checking her phone again for a text from her mom. No new messages. Dr. Kendra Jackson was rarely late, but the hospital sometimes kept her when emergencies came up. Amara understood. Her mother saved lives after all. The metal bench nearby looked inviting, but someone had left a coffee spill across most of it. Instead, Amara carefully made her way toward a silver Honda parked under the shade of an oak tree. She didn't want to sit on someone's car, of course, but leaning against it for a moment would give her legs the break they needed. Balancing carefully, she shifted her weight and let her shoulder rest against the cool metal of the car. Relief washed over her as the pressure eased from her legs. She pulled out her notebook, the one with the galaxy cover her best friend Zoe had given her for her birthday, and began to write. Poetry had become Amara's escape over the past year, a place where her body's limitations couldn't follow her. She was deep in thought, searching for the perfect word to complete her stanza, when a sharp voice cut through her concentration. "Hey, what do you think you're doing to that car?" Amara looked up to see a police officer striding toward her, his face already set in a scowl. His nameplate read Officer Daniels, and something about his tone made her stomach tighten. She'd been warned about this. Her mother had those talks with her early on. "Be respectful. Don't make sudden movements. Keep your hands where they can see them." "I'm not doing anything to the car, sir," Amara replied, straightening up as much as her body would allow. "Just leaning on it while waiting for my mom to pick me up." Officer Daniels stopped a few feet away, his eyes moving from Amara to the car and back again. His gaze lingered on her crutch and then dismissed it, as if it were just a prop in some teenage drama. "Step away from the vehicle," he ordered, his hand resting casually on his belt. "I've had reports of kids scratching cars in this area." Amara felt her chest tighten. Reports? She hadn't seen anyone else around for the past 20 minutes. She carefully pushed herself off the car, wobbling slightly as she found her balance with her crutch. "I wasn't scratching anything, sir. I just needed to rest for a minute after physical therapy. I have cerebral palsy, and standing for too long is difficult for me." The officer's expression hardened, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. "Physical therapy, huh? Convenient excuse. Let me see what you've got in that bag." Amara glanced down at her backpack, confusion replacing her initial nervousness. "It's just my school stuff and therapy equipment." "I'll be the judge of that," Officer Daniels said, stepping closer. "Kids like you are always up to something in this neighborhood. Kids like you." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that Amara understood all too well. It wasn't just about being a teenager. She'd heard those exact words before, whispered in hallways or muttered under breath in stores when her mother wasn't nearby. "Sir, I'm just waiting for my mom. She's a doctor at Memorial Hospital and she'll be here any minute." Amara tried to keep her voice steady, even as her heart pounded against her ribs. She shifted her weight, a spasm running through her left leg, a common occurrence when she was stressed. Officer Daniels mistook her movement for defiance. "Stand still when I'm talking to you," he snapped, his voice rising. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." A small crowd was beginning to form at the community center entrance. Mrs. Rivera, Amara's art teacher, stepped out and paused at the top of the stairs, her expression changing from casual interest to concern as she recognized Amara. "Officer, I don't understand what I've done wrong," Amara said, fighting to keep her voice from trembling. "I'm happy to show you my ID. I'm a student at Westview High and I come here for therapy twice a week. I don't care if you're the principal's daughter. When an officer gives you an order, you follow it." His hand moved from his belt to his radio. "Last chance before I call for backup." The unfairness of it all hit Amara like a physical blow. She had done nothing wrong, nothing at all, and yet here she was being treated like a criminal because of who she was and how she looked. A combination of fear and anger rose in her chest, threatening to spill over in tears, but she forced it down. Crying would only make things worse. With shaking hands, she opened her backpack. "Look, these are my therapy bands and my notebook. I was just writing poetry while waiting." That's all I was doing. Officer Daniels snatched the Galaxy notebook from her hands, flipping through the pages with obvious disinterest before tossing it back at her. Amara fumbled to catch it, nearly losing her balance in the process. "And what about this?" he demanded, pointing to a small scratch on the car's paint that Amara hadn't even noticed. "You expect me to believe this was here before you decided to use someone's private property as your personal bench?" I wouldn't." Amara struggled to find words through her rising panic. "I didn't scratch anything." Mrs. Rivera was making her way down the stairs now, phone in hand. From the corner of her eye, Amara could see the art teacher taking pictures, her face a mask of outrage. "Officer," Mrs. Rivera called out, her voice carrying across the parking lot. "What's going on here?" "Amara is one of my students." Officer Daniels barely spared the teacher a glance. "This is police business, ma'am." "Please step back." "Police business?" Mrs. Rivera repeated, continuing her approach. "She's a 15-year-old girl waiting for her mother after therapy. What exactly is the issue here?" The officer's jaw tightened. "The issue is vandalism and disrespecting an officer. Now I asked you to step back." A blue sedan turned sharply into the parking lot, tires squealing slightly as it came to an abrupt stop in a nearby space. Dr. Kendra Jackson emerged, her hospital scrub still on and her face a picture of alarm as she took in the scene before her. "Amara? What's happening?" she called, rushing toward them. Relief flooded through Amara at the sight of her mother, Dr. Jackson with her calm confidence and unwavering authority. Even Officer Daniels seemed to sense the shift in the air as she approached. "Mom," Amara's voice cracked slightly. "This officer thinks I scratched a car, but I didn't. I was just leaning on it because my legs were hurting after therapy." Dr. Jackson reached her daughter's side, standing protectively close. She was shorter than the officer by several inches, but her presence seemed to fill the space between them. "Officer," she said, her voice level but with an edge that Amara recognized as her mother's "don't mess with me" tone. "I apologize for being late to pick up my daughter. Has something happened here that I should know about?" "Your daughter was caught vandalizing this vehicle," Officer Daniels stated flatly. "And she's been uncooperative with my investigation." Dr. Jackson's eyebrows rose. "Vandalizing, Amara?" "Officer, my daughter has cerebral palsy. She was waiting for me after her physical therapy session, which I can verify with her therapist inside if necessary. She couldn't vandalize anything. Having a disability doesn't give her special permission to damage property or attitude with law enforcement," the officer replied, his voice taking on a defensive tone. More people were gathering now. Someone was definitely recording with their phone. Amara could see the raised arm and hear the murmurs from the small crowd. "My daughter doesn't need special permission to be treated with basic human dignity," Dr. Jackson said, her voice still calm but carrying a steel edge that made even Officer Daniels hesitate. "Now I'd like to see the evidence of this alleged vandalism." The officer pointed again to the small scratch on the car's paint. "This damage was reported by—" "Reported?" Dr. Jackson interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "You said you had reports of kids scratching cars. When exactly was this damage reported?" Officer Daniels' expression flickered, the first sign of uncertainty crossing his face. "We've had multiple complaints in this area. About this specific car, today? Because my daughter has been here for less than an hour, and I find it hard to believe someone reported this minor scratch in that time frame." Dr. Jackson pulled out her phone. "In fact, I'd like to take some pictures of this damage myself." As she moved to photograph the scratch, a young man hurried across the parking lot, keys in hand. "Hey, what's going on with my car?" Officer Daniels straightened, seeming relieved to have the actual owner present. "Sir, we've caught someone vandalizing your vehicle. The owner," a college-aged guy with a Westview Community College sweatshirt, looked confused as he glanced between the officer, Amara, and the barely visible scratch. "That scratch? That's been there for weeks. My brother did it with his bike." He looked at Amara, noticing her crutch and tearful expression. "Wait, you think she did it? That's ridiculous." The air seemed to leave Officer Daniels all at once, though his expression remained stony. Mrs. Rivera stepped forward, phone still recording. "I think we all need to take a step back," she said firmly. "Amara is one of our most dedicated students. If there's been a misunderstanding here, perhaps we should clear it up without further escalation." Dr. Jackson's arm wrapped protectively around Amara's shoulders. "Officer," I'd like your badge number and the name of your supervising officer. This situation has been completely mishandled from the start. Amara could feel the eyes of everyone on her. The growing crowd, her mother, Mrs. Rivera, the car owner, and most of all, Officer Daniels. In that moment, she felt smaller than she ever had before, yet somehow stronger too. She'd done nothing wrong, and now everyone could see it. As her mother requested the officer's information, Amara spotted her notebook on the ground where it had fallen during the confrontation. The galaxy cover that had once seemed so magical now looked dull under the afternoon sun. But Amara knew that tonight, when she was alone in her room, she would open it again and write about this day, about fear and unfairness, but also about standing her ground even when her legs could barely hold her up. Because that was the thing about Amara that Officer Daniels had failed to see from the beginning. Her true strength had never been in her legs at all. Dr. Kendra Jackson stood her ground, her hand firmly placed on Amara's shoulder, as if to shield her daughter from the officer's gaze. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the community center parking lot, but the heat of the confrontation hadn't cooled one bit. I want your badge number and the name of your supervisor, Dr. Jackson repeated, her voice calm but unyielding. She'd dealt with difficult surgeons and hospital administrators throughout her career. An officer with a chip on his shoulder wasn't about to intimidate her, especially not when it came to her daughter. Officer Daniels crossed his arms, his posture defensive. Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. When I see suspicious activity, Dr. Jackson cut him off. My daughter was waiting for me after her therapy session. How exactly is that suspicious? The small crowd that had gathered murmured in agreement. Mrs. Rivera, Amara's art teacher, moved closer, her phone still recording. Dr. Jackson, Mrs. Rivera said, I saw everything. Amara was just standing there when the officer approached her. She wasn't doing anything wrong. The owner of the car, the college student in the Westview Community College sweatshirt, nodded emphatically. Yeah, and like I said, that scratch has been there for weeks. My little brother did it with his bike. It wasn't her. Officer Daniels' jaw tightened. He glanced around at the growing number of witnesses, clearly realizing the situation was slipping out of his control. I still need to see some ID, he insisted, turning back to Amara. She's 15 years old, Dr. Jackson said, her patience visibly wearing thin. She doesn't carry a driver's license. But I have her student ID right here. She reached into her purse and pulled out Amara's school ID card, holding it up but not handing it over. Amara stood silently beside her mother, her legs trembling slightly from standing so long after therapy. Her throat felt tight like she might cry at any moment, but she fought against it. She didn't want to give Officer Daniels the satisfaction of seeing her breakdown. Mom, she whispered, my legs are getting really tired. Dr. Jackson immediately shifted her attention to her daughter, concern replacing anger in her eyes. Let's get you to the car, sweetie. She turned back to Officer Daniels. My daughter needs to sit down. Her physical therapy today was intense, and standing for this long is painful for her. We're not finished here, Officer Daniels said, taking a step forward. I believe we are, came a new voice. An older man in a police uniform approached from a patrol car that had just pulled up. The name tag on his chest read, Captain Henderson. Officer Daniels straightened immediately. Captain, I heard the call come in on the radio, Captain Henderson said, his expression unreadable. Thought I'd stop by since I was in the area. He looked at the gathered crowd, then at Amara and her mother. What seems to be the situation here? Before Officer Daniels could speak, Mrs. Rivera stepped forward. This officer accused this young lady of vandalizing a car that the owner just confirmed was already damaged weeks ago. He's been harassing her despite clear evidence of her disability and the fact that she was simply waiting for her mother after therapy. Captain Henderson's gaze moved to Amara, taking in her crutch and the strain evident on her young face. Is that accurate? He asked, not specifying who he was addressing. Yes, sir, Dr. Jackson answered firmly. My daughter was leaning against the car because standing for long periods is difficult for her. Officer Daniels approached her aggressively, refused to listen to her explanation, and proceeded to accuse her of a crime she didn't commit. The captain turned to the car's owner. And you say the damage was pre-existing? Yes, sir, the young man replied. My brother scratched it weeks ago with his bike. It's been there. She didn't do anything to my car. Captain Henderson nodded slowly, then turned to Officer Daniels. Let's talk privately for a moment, he said, gesturing toward his patrol car. As the two officers walked away, Amara felt her knees buckle slightly. Her mother caught her, wrapping an arm securely around her waist. "Let's get you sitting down," Dr. Jackson said gently, guiding Amara toward their car. Mrs. Rivera followed them. "I recorded most of what happened," she said quietly, "in case you need it." "Thank you, Alice," Dr. Jackson said, using the teacher's first name with evident familiarity. "I appreciate that." Once they reached their car, Amara sank gratefully into the passenger seat, her legs finally getting the relief they desperately needed. The tension of the confrontation was catching up to her now, and her hands shook as she tried to fasten her seatbelt. "Here, let me," her mother said softly, reaching across to click the belt into place. Then Dr. Jackson knelt beside the open car door, taking Amara's trembling hands in her own. "Are you okay, baby?" Amara shook her head, tears finally spilling over. "He didn't even see me, Mom," she whispered. "He just saw—" "I know," Dr. Jackson said, her own eyes glistening. "I know exactly what he saw, and it wasn't you." Mrs. Rivera stood a respectful distance away, her phone now lowered but still in her hand. "Dr. Jackson, half the community center saw what happened. People were recording. This isn't going to just go away." Dr. Jackson nodded, still holding Amara's hands. "It shouldn't go away. This happens too often, and most times there aren't witnesses or recordings." She looked back at her daughter. "But right now I need to get Amara home. Her body's been through enough today." The college student who owned the car approached cautiously. "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry about what happened. That officer was completely out of line." Amara managed a small smile through her tears. "Thanks for telling the truth about the scratch." "Of course," he said, looking uncomfortable. "It was the truth." Captain Henderson returned alone. Officer Daniels was visible in the distance, sitting in his patrol car, his expression thunderous even from afar. "Dr. Jackson," the captain said, his tone formal, but not unkind. "I want to apologize for this incident. Officer Daniels is relatively new to the force, and his handling of this situation was inappropriate." Dr. Jackson stood, straightening to her full height. "With all due respect, Captain, this wasn't just inappropriate. This was profiling, plain and simple. My daughter was targeted because of her race, and her disability was completely dismissed." The captain didn't immediately deny it, which surprised both Jacksons. "I understand your concern," he said carefully, "and I assure you this will be addressed internally." "Internally isn't good enough," Dr. Jackson replied. "I'll be filing a formal complaint. And I want to see the body camera footage." Captain Henderson nodded. "That's your right. You can come down to the station tomorrow to file the complaint. As for the body camera," he hesitated, "I'll have to check if it was operational." A ripple of disbelief went through the small group. Mrs. Rivera stepped forward again. "Well, our cameras were definitely operational, Captain," she said, holding up her phone. "And from what I understand, so were at least 5 others." The growing tension was interrupted by the sound of Amara's phone pinging repeatedly. She pulled it out to find a flurry of text messages and social media notifications. "Mom," she said, her voice small with surprise, "people are already posting about what happened. Zoe says it's all over Snapchat." Dr. Jackson looked at her daughter, then at the captain. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. In the time it takes for your internal review, my daughter's already being put through this publicly. What protection does she have?" "She's a minor." "I understand your frustration," Captain Henderson began. "No, I don't think you do," Dr. Jackson cut him off. "This isn't an isolated incident for us. Every time Amara leaves the house, I worry. Will someone see her as a threat? Will they ignore her disability? Will they hurt her because they don't see her as a person worth protecting?" Her voice cracked slightly. "She's 15 years old. She was writing poetry while waiting for her mother. And your officer treated her like a criminal." The weight of her words hung in the air. Even the captain seemed momentarily at a loss for a response. Amara reached out from her seat, taking her mother's hand. "Mom, can we go home now, please?" Dr. Jackson's expression softened as she looked down at her daughter. "Yes, baby, we're going." She turned back to the captain one last time. "This isn't over. I'll be at the station tomorrow to file that complaint, and I'll be bringing our lawyer." As they drove away from the community center, Amara stared out the window, watching as people continued to gather in small clusters, phones out, discussing what they'd just witnessed. Her own phone kept buzzing with notifications, but she couldn't bring herself to look at them anymore. "Do you think anything will actually happen?" she asked quietly after several minutes of silence. To the officer, I mean. Dr. Jackson gripped the steering wheel tightly. I don't know, sweetheart. But I promise you this, I won't let them sweep it under the rug. What happened today was wrong, and I will make sure everyone knows it. Amara nodded, her throat tight again. I was so scared, she admitted. Not just of him, but of what might happen. All those stories we hear on the news. I know, her mother said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. But you handled yourself beautifully. You were strong and brave, even when he tried to intimidate you. I didn't feel brave. That's the thing about bravery, Amara. It's not about not being afraid. It's about standing your ground even when you're terrified. Dr. Jackson paused at a red light and looked over at her daughter. And that's exactly what you did today. As they continued their drive home, Amara's phone pinged one more time. It was a message from Mrs. Rivera. Just so you know, I've already spoken to Principal Winters about what happened. The whole school stands with you, Amara. You're not alone in this. For the first time since the confrontation began, Amara felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe this time someone would actually listen. By the next morning, the video of Amara's confrontation with Officer Daniels had spread far beyond Westview. Dr. Jackson's phone rang constantly. Local news stations, community activists, and concerned friends all wanting to know what happened and how they could help. Amara sat at the kitchen table, pushing her cereal around in the bowl without eating it. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Officer Daniels' face, heard his voice. Kids like you are always up to something. You don't have to go to school today if you don't want to, Dr. Jackson said, putting a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. She'd taken the day off from the hospital, something she rarely did outside of emergencies. But this was an emergency, just not the medical kind. Amara looked up at her mother. If I stay home, it's like letting him win, she said quietly. Like I did something wrong. Dr. Jackson's eyes softened with pride. That's my girl. But if it gets to be too much, I'll call you, Amara promised. But Zoe will be there and Mrs. Rivera and... She glanced down at her phone, which hadn't stopped buzzing with supportive messages since yesterday. Lots of people have my back. As they pulled up to Westview High School, Amara's stomach tightened at the sight of news vans parked across the street. Mom, I didn't think... Don't worry, Dr. Jackson said firmly. Principal Winters called me this morning. The reporters aren't allowed on school property, and they've been instructed not to approach any students. Amara nodded, but her anxiety didn't ease. It wasn't just the reporters that worried her. It was everyone else. The students, the teachers, even the school security guard who would surely have heard about what happened. Would they look at her differently now? Remember, her mother said as Amara gathered her backpack. We have an appointment with the lawyer at 4, and then we're heading to the police station to file the formal complaint. I'll pick you up right after last period. Okay, Amara agreed, taking a deep breath before opening the car door. She'd barely made it to the main entrance when Zoe came rushing toward her, nearly tackling her with a hug that almost knocked them both over. You're here, Zoe exclaimed, steadying Amara quickly as she remembered her friend's balance issues. I wasn't sure if you'd come today. Are you okay? That cop was horrible. The video was so... Slow down, Amara interrupted with a small smile. It was good to see her best friend's familiar face, even if the circumstances were awful. I'm okay, just tired, and not really wanting to talk about it with everyone. Zoe nodded earnestly. Got it, no problem. I'll run interference. She looped her arm through Amara's free one, the one not using the crutch, in a gesture that was both supportive and protective. Anyone who wants to bug you about it has to go through me first. As they walked through the halls toward their lockers, Amara could feel eyes on her. Conversations paused as she passed, only to resume in hurried whispers once she was a few steps away. A few students gave her encouraging nods or small waves. Others quickly looked away as if embarrassed to be caught staring. Just ignore them, Zoe whispered. Half of them probably haven't even seen the video and are just jumping on the gossip train. And the other half? Amara asked. Zoe squeezed her arm. The other half are on your side. Trust me. When they reached English class, Mr. Thomas greeted Amara with a warm smile that held no pity, just genuine concern. Good to see you today, Amara, he said simply, before continuing with his lesson preparations as if nothing unusual had happened. Amara slipped into her seat, grateful for the normalcy. But halfway through the class discussion on To Kill a Mockingbird, the school intercom crackled to life. "Attention all students and staff," Principal Winter's voice echoed through the room. "As some of you may be aware, one of our students was involved in an unfortunate incident yesterday with local law enforcement. While I cannot discuss the details, I want to make it clear that Westview High School stands firmly behind our students. We believe in treating every person with dignity and respect, regardless of race, ability, or background. Anyone approached by media should direct them to the school administration. Thank you." All eyes turned to Amara, who kept her gaze fixed on her desk, her cheeks burning. Mr. Thomas quickly redirected the class. "Now returning to Chapter 6, what do we make of Scout's observations about class differences in Maycomb?" By lunchtime, Amara was emotionally exhausted from the constant attention. She sat with Zoe at their usual table, trying to ignore the stares and whispers. "You should check this out," Zoe said, sliding her phone across the table. "People are organizing a protest at the police station this weekend." Amara scrolled through the social media page. Hundreds of people had already committed to attending. The event description read, "Stand with Amara Jackson, a disabled teen wrongfully accused by Westview PD. Demand accountability and an end to racial profiling in our community." "I don't know how to feel about this," Amara admitted, handing the phone back. "I mean, it's nice that people care, but it's weird seeing my name out there like I'm some kind of symbol." "You're not just a symbol," came a voice from behind her. Amara turned to see Dion Walker, the senior class president and one of the most respected students in school. He rarely spoke to underclassmen, making his approach even more surprising. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, gesturing to an empty chair at their table. Amara nodded, too startled to speak. "I wanted you to know," Dion continued, "that the student council is drafting a formal letter to the mayor and police chief about what happened to you. We're also organizing a student forum on Friday to discuss police interactions with youth in our community. We'd really like you to be there if you're comfortable with it." "Me?" Amara asked, genuinely surprised. "Why?" "Because you lived it," Dion said simply. "And because I've read your poetry in the school literary magazine. You have a way with words that makes people listen." Amara felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest. Not anxiety or fear, but something warmer. Pride, maybe. Recognition. "I'll think about it," she promised. After Dion left, Zoe let out a low whistle. "Wow, Dion Walker actually knows who you are." "And he's read your poetry." Amara smiled despite herself. "I guess some good might come from all this after all." That afternoon in her art class with Mrs. Rivera, Amara found herself unable to concentrate on the still life arrangement they were supposed to be drawing. Instead, her pencil moved across the paper almost of its own accord, sketching the scene from yesterday. Officer Daniel's looming figure, her mother's protective stance, the gathering crowd of witnesses. Mrs. Rivera paused behind her, observing silently for a moment before speaking. "That's powerful, Amara. Much more meaningful than another bowl of fruit." Amara looked up at her teacher, the woman who had stepped forward to help when she needed it most. "I keep seeing it all in my head. I thought maybe if I put it on paper, it might help you process it," Mrs. Rivera finished for her. "Art can be healing that way." "Do you think anything will really change because of what happened?" Amara asked, the question that had been weighing on her mind all day. Mrs. Rivera considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Change rarely happens all at once," she said finally. "But sometimes it needs a catalyst, something that makes people impossible to ignore. What happened to you was wrong, Amara. And because it was captured, because it was witnessed, because it can't be denied, yes, I think it might lead to some change." After school, as promised, Dr. Jackson was waiting in the parking lot. Beside her stood a tall woman in a crisp pantsuit who Amara recognized as Ms. Chen, the lawyer her mother had mentioned. "How was school?" Dr. Jackson asked as Amara approached. "Different," Amara replied honestly. "Everyone knows or thinks they know what happened." "That's to be expected," Ms. Chen said with a sympathetic nod. "Your story has resonated with a lot of people." On the drive to the police station, Ms. Chen briefed them on what to expect. "We'll file the formal complaint and I'll request the body camera footage under the Freedom of Information Act. Captain Henderson may try to discourage you or minimize what happened. Don't let him. Trust me," Dr. Jackson said, her eyes meeting Amara's in the rearview mirror. "That's not going to happen." The police station was smaller than Amara had imagined and oddly quiet. Captain Henderson was waiting for them in the lobby, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Jackson, Amara." He greeted them with a nod. "And you must be their attorney." "Lisa Chen," the lawyer confirmed, extending her hand. "We're here to file a formal complaint against Officer Daniels for his conduct yesterday." "I anticipated as much," Captain Henderson said. "If you'll follow me, I have the forms ready in my office." As they walked through the station, Amara felt eyes on her again. Officers pausing their conversations to watch her pass, some curious, others wary. She held her head high, focusing on keeping her balance on the slick tile floor. In the captain's office, he slid a stack of forms across the desk. "These are standard complaint forms. Take your time filling them out. I also want to inform you that Officer Daniels has been placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation." "Administrative leave?" Dr. Jackson repeated, her tone skeptical. "With pay, I assume?" The captain nodded. "That's standard procedure during an investigation." "And the body camera footage?" Ms. Chen asked. Something flickered across Captain Henderson's face. Discomfort, perhaps, or reluctance. "There's an issue with that," he admitted. "It appears the camera wasn't functioning properly during the incident." "How convenient," Dr. Jackson said, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "Fortunately," Ms. Chen added, "we have multiple civilian videos of the incident. I've already collected statements from 6 witnesses, including the owner of the car in question." Captain Henderson's expression remained neutral, but his posture stiffened slightly. "The department takes these matters very seriously. Ms. Chen, I assure you there will be a thorough investigation." As the adults continued their tense discussion, Amara's attention drifted to a bulletin board on the wall. Among the wanted posters and community notices was a flyer for a youth police academy program, featuring smiling officers posing with teenagers of various backgrounds. The slogan read, "Building trust one relationship at a time." The irony wasn't lost on her. She thought of Officer Daniels, of his dismissal of her disability, his assumption of guilt, his thinly veiled racial comments. What trust had he built? Yet strangely, sitting here in this office, watching her mother and Ms. Chen advocate for her, knowing that people at school and in the community were rallying around her cause, Amara felt something unexpected stirring inside her. Not just anger or fear, but a new sense of purpose. Maybe her voice could help make sure this didn't happen to someone else. Maybe her story could be the catalyst Mrs. Rivera had talked about. When she finally spoke, interrupting the ongoing discussion about investigation timelines, her voice was quiet but firm. "I want to speak at the student forum on Friday," she said, "and at the protest this weekend too. I want people to hear what really happened from me." Her mother looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "Are you sure, Amara? It won't be easy." Amara nodded, thinking of Dayan's words, of Mrs. Rivera's faith in her, of the hundreds of people ready to stand with her. "I'm sure," she said. "I found my voice yesterday when Officer Daniels tried to silence me. Now I want to use it." The school auditorium hummed with voices as students and community members filed in for the Friday forum. Amara sat backstage, her hands fidgeting with the note cards containing her speech. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "You okay?" Zoe asked, sitting beside her friend and offering a bottle of water. Amara took a small sip, then nodded. "Just nervous. I've never spoken in front of this many people before." "Just pretend they're all in their underwear," Zoe suggested with a grin. "That makes it worse." Amara laughed despite her anxiety. The sound of her own laughter surprised her. It had been days since she'd felt anything close to normal. Principal Winters poked her head around the curtain. "We're about to start, Amara. You'll be our 3rd speaker after Dion and the community liaison officer." "Community liaison officer?" Amara repeated, her stomach tightening. "No one said anything about police being here." "It's Officer Rodriguez," Principal Winters explained quickly. "She's not involved in your case at all, and she specifically asked to be here to show support for you." Amara nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't ease. The idea of any police officer in the room made her palms sweat and her mouth go dry. Dr. Jackson appeared next to the principal. "I'm sitting in the front row," she told Amara, bending down to hug her daughter. "If you get overwhelmed, just look at me." "Thanks, Mom," Amara whispered. Through a gap in the curtains, Amara watched as the auditorium filled. There were students she recognized, teachers, parents, and people from the community she'd never seen before. Local news crews set up cameras at the back of the room. A reporter she recognized from the evening news stood off to the side, talking into her microphone. Dion stepped onto the stage, his confident voice calling the forum to order. He spoke about student safety, community trust, and the importance of accountability. The audience applauded as he introduced Officer Rodriguez. The officer was younger than Amara had expected, with kind eyes and a gentle voice that contrasted sharply with Officer Daniels' harsh tone from that day at the community center. She spoke about the department's commitment to rebuilding trust, about the need for better training, and about her own experiences as a woman of color in law enforcement. "What happened to Amara Jackson should never have happened," she said, her gaze sweeping across the audience. "And while I cannot speak officially for the department in an ongoing investigation, I can say personally that I am deeply sorry for the pain and fear she experienced." The sincerity in her voice caught Amara off guard. It was the first time any officer had acknowledged her feelings, not just the technical details of the incident. "And now," Officer Rodriguez continued, "I'd like to introduce you to someone whose courage and resilience should inspire us all. Please welcome Amara Jackson." Zoe squeezed Amara's hand. "You've got this." Taking a deep breath, Amara gripped her crutch and made her way carefully onto the stage. The bright lights momentarily blinded her, and the sea of faces blurred together. She found her mother in the front row just as promised, giving her an encouraging nod. Amara placed her note cards on the podium. But as she looked out at the expectant faces, she realized the carefully prepared words didn't feel right anymore. She pushed the cards aside. "3 days ago," she began, her voice quiet at first, then gaining strength. "I was waiting for my mom after physical therapy. My legs were tired, they always are after therapy, so I leaned against a car to rest. That's all I was doing, writing poetry and resting my legs." She paused, looking out at the silent audience. Officer Daniels didn't see a tired girl with cerebral palsy. He didn't see a student who loves poetry and art. He didn't see me at all. Amara's voice caught slightly. What he saw was my skin color, and he decided, based on nothing else, that I was a criminal. From the corner of her eye, Amara noticed a movement at the back of the auditorium. Captain Henderson had slipped in and stood against the wall watching intently. "I've spent my whole life dealing with people who see my disability before they see me," Amara continued. "But at least most of them are trying to help, even if they sometimes get it wrong. Officer Daniels didn't even consider that I might have a disability. He ordered me to move quickly, to stand still, to put my hands on the car, all things that are physically difficult or painful for me." She gripped the edges of the podium, steadying herself. "I'm 15 years old. I've never broken a law in my life. But in that moment I was terrified. I've seen the news. I know what happens to people who look like me when they encounter police officers who think like Officer Daniels." The audience was utterly silent now, hanging on her every word. "But this isn't just about me," Amara said, her voice growing stronger. "It's about every kid who doesn't feel safe in their own community. It's about every person with a disability whose needs are ignored. It's about the assumptions people make based on skin color instead of actions." She looked directly at Captain Henderson now. "I don't want Officer Daniels to lose his job. I want him to learn. I want him to understand what it feels like to be judged before you open your mouth. I want him to see people, really see them, for who they are, not what they look like or how they move." Amara took a shaky breath. "And I want everyone in this room to think about the assumptions they make every day. Because we all do it. We see someone and we think we know their story. But we don't. We can't. Not until we take the time to listen." As she finished speaking, the auditorium remained silent for 1 heartbeat, then 2, and then the applause began, scattered at first, then swelling until it filled the room. People rose to their feet, their faces showing a mix of emotions: sadness, anger, determination, and hope. Dr. Jackson was the first on her feet, tears streaming down her face as she applauded her daughter. Beside her, Ms. Chen nodded approvingly. Even Captain Henderson, still standing at the back of the room, slowly brought his hands together. As Amara made her way back to her seat, her legs trembling from standing so long, Dayon returned to the microphone. "Thank you, Amara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't think any of us could have said it better." The forum continued with questions from the audience and responses from a panel that included Officer Rodriguez, Principal Winters, and 2 community activists. Amara sat quietly, emotionally drained but somehow lighter, as if speaking her truth had lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. After the forum ended, people lined up to speak with her. Students she barely knew told her how moved they were by her words. Teachers expressed their pride. Community members shared their own stories of similar encounters. Captain Henderson approached last, waiting until most of the crowd had dispersed. "That was quite a speech, Amara," he said, his tone difficult to read. Dr. Jackson moved protectively closer to her daughter, but Amara gave her a reassuring nod. "I meant every word," she told the captain. "I believe you did." He hesitated, then continued. "I want you to know that I've recommended sensitivity training for all officers, with a specific focus on interactions with disabled individuals. And Officer Daniels has agreed to participate in a restorative justice program if you're open to it." "Restorative justice?" Amara asked, not familiar with the term. "It's a process that brings together those who have caused harm and those who have experienced it," Captain Henderson explained. "Not to punish, but to understand and to heal. It would mean sitting down with Officer Daniels in a controlled environment with trained mediators to talk about what happened and how it affected you." Amara glanced at her mother, surprised. "He wants to talk to me?" "Not yet," the captain admitted. "Right now he's still defensive. But after hearing your speech today, I think he might be ready to listen, given some time." Before Amara could respond, Ms. Chen stepped forward. "That's a discussion for another day, Captain. Today has been emotionally taxing enough." "Of course," he agreed, stepping back. "Just something to consider." As they walked to the car, Amara was quiet, processing everything that had happened. "You were amazing up there," Dr. Jackson said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I'm so proud of you. Do you think I should do it?" Amara asked suddenly. "The restorative justice thing with Officer Daniels?" Dr. Jackson considered this carefully. "That's entirely up to you, Amara. There's no right or wrong answer. What do you think?" "I'm not sure," Amara admitted. "Part of me never wants to see him again. But another part wants him to truly understand," her mother finished. "Yeah." Amara nodded. "Not just for me, but for the next person he encounters who might not have videos and witnesses and a mom like you." Dr. Jackson smiled, her eyes glistening with tears again. "Like I said, I'm so proud of you. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." As they reached the car, Amara's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Mrs. Rivera, with a link to the local news station's website. The headline read, "Local Teens Powerful Speech Challenges Police Department. Community to really see people." Below it was a photo of Amara at the podium, her face alight with determination and purpose. "Looks like people are listening," Dr. Jackson said, glancing at the phone. Amara nodded, a mix of emotions swirling inside her: pride, exhaustion, anxiety, and something else, something that felt a lot like hope. "Tomorrow's the protest," she said, fastening her seatbelt. "Do you think as many people will show up as they promised online?" "I don't know," her mother replied honestly. "But even if it's just you, me, and Zoe, we'll still be making our voices heard." Amara smiled, thinking about the words she'd spoken on stage and the faces of the people listening. For the first time since Officer Daniels had approached her in that parking lot, she felt a sense of power, not over others, but within herself. "It won't be just us," she said confidently. "Not anymore." 6 months passed like a blur of activity for Amara. The protest that Saturday had drawn over 300 people, far more than anyone expected. Local news covered it extensively, and soon regional outlets picked up the story. Amara's speech from the school forum was shared thousands of times online. She received messages from disabled teens across the country who saw themselves in her story, and from parents who feared similar encounters for their children. What began as a terrifying confrontation in a parking lot had somehow transformed into something powerful, a movement of sorts, centered right there in Westview. On a crisp autumn morning, Amara sat in a small conference room at the community center, the same building where everything had started half a year ago. Her mother sat beside her, along with Ms. Chen, the lawyer who had stood by them throughout the process. Across the table sat 2 trained mediators, Dr. Powell, a psychologist, and Mr. Washington, a respected community elder who had worked in conflict resolution for decades. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Dr. Jackson asked her daughter quietly, squeezing her hand under the table. Amara nodded, though her stomach was tied in knots. I'm sure. The door opened and Officer Daniels walked in, accompanied by Captain Henderson. Amara's breath caught in her throat at the sight of him. He looked different somehow, less imposing than she remembered, his shoulders slightly hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. Thank you all for being here, Dr. Powell began once everyone was seated. This is the first formal meeting of our restorative justice process. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this is a safe space for honest communication. We're not here to assign blame or punishment, but to understand each other and find a path toward healing. Mr. Washington nodded in agreement. We've had individual sessions with each of you over the past few weeks. Today is about bringing those conversations together. Amara glanced at Officer Daniels, who kept his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The confident, aggressive officer from that day seemed far away. Officer Daniels, Mr. Washington continued gently. Would you like to begin? The officer cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. For a moment, Amara thought he might refuse to speak. But then he looked up, first at the mediators, then at Captain Henderson, and finally, with visible effort, at Amara. I've been a police officer for 3 years, he began, his voice rougher than Amara remembered. Before that, I was in the military. Both jobs trained me to see threats everywhere, to make quick judgments, to act decisively. He paused, swallowing hard. They didn't train me to listen? Amara watched him carefully, trying to reconcile this subdued man with the officer who had terrified her. When I approached you that day, Officer Daniels continued, now speaking directly to Amara, I didn't see a tired girl waiting for her mother. I saw, he trailed off. What did you see? Dr. Powell prompted gently. Officer Daniels sighed heavily. I saw what I was trained to see, a potential threat, a situation to control. He shook his head. But that training was filtered through my own biases. Biases I didn't even realize I had until all this happened. The room fell silent for a moment. Amara could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant sounds of children playing basketball in the gym down the hall. These past 6 months haven't been easy, Officer Daniels continued. The investigation, the sensitivity training, the community service at the disability center. But the hardest part has been facing myself. Watching that video, hearing your speech at the forum. He looked directly at Amara now, his eyes clearer than she remembered. I'm sorry. Those words feel completely inadequate, but I am truly sorry for how I treated you. You deserved respect and compassion, and instead, I gave you fear and judgment. Amara hadn't expected the apology to sound so sincere. She'd prepared herself for excuses, for half-hearted acknowledgments wrapped in defensive justifications. The straightforward admission caught her off guard. Thank you, she said quietly, surprising herself. For saying that, Dr. Powell turned to her. Amara, would you like to share how that day affected you? She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. She'd written and rewritten what she wanted to say, practiced it in front of her mirror countless times, but now face to face with Officer Daniels, different words came. Before that day, I saw police officers as people who were supposed to help, she began. Afterward, I saw them as people to fear. Every time I see a patrol car now, my heart races. Every time an officer walks near me, I wonder if they're seeing me or just my skin color. Officer Daniels winced visibly, but didn't interrupt. That day changed how I see myself too, Amara continued. At first I felt smaller, more vulnerable, but then something unexpected happened. She sat up straighter. I found my voice. I realized that what happened to me happens to so many people, but not everyone gets to tell their story. Not everyone has videos and witnesses and a mom who fights for them. Dr. Jackson smiled at her daughter, her eyes bright with unshed tears. So I decided to use my voice, Amara said. Not just for myself, but for others too. The youth advocacy group I started now has over 50 members. We're working with the police department on new training protocols. We're speaking at schools about disability awareness and racial bias. She looked directly at Officer Daniels now. What you did was wrong. It hurt me, and it could have been so much worse. But the change that came after, that's been important. Captain Henderson, who had been silent until now, nodded thoughtfully. The department has implemented several of the recommendations from Amara's group, he said, including body cameras that can't be deactivated during encounters and mandatory disability response training for all officers. It's a start, Ms. Chen acknowledged. Though there's still a long way to go. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. Officer Daniels described his background, including growing up in a small town with little diversity and joining the police force after 2 tours in Afghanistan. Amara shared more about living with cerebral palsy, about the daily challenges most people never see. They discussed assumptions, fear, the weight of history, and the possibility of change. By the end, nothing was magically fixed. Officer Daniels was still on probation with the department. Amara still felt a flutter of anxiety whenever she saw a police uniform. But something had shifted. A door had opened that had previously seemed locked shut. "This is just the beginning of the process," Mr. Washington reminded everyone as the session wound down. "True healing takes time. True change takes commitment." As they prepared to leave, Officer Daniels hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. A small, worn notebook. "I've been carrying this," he said, holding it out to Amara. "To remind myself to look deeper, to listen before judging. It's like the one you had that day." Amara looked at the notebook, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you," she said, simply accepting it. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and cool. The trees around the community center had turned brilliant shades of red and gold. Amara breathed deeply, feeling the tightness in her chest ease a little. "You okay?" her mother asked as they walked to the car. "Yeah," Amara replied, surprised to find it was true. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. Later that afternoon, Amara sat in her bedroom, the window open to let in the fresh air. She opened both notebooks, her original galaxy-covered one and the plain one Officer Daniels had given her. In the first, she had documented her journey over the past 6 months. The fear, the anger, the unexpected moments of strength and connection. The pages told the story of a girl finding her voice in the aftermath of injustice. The second notebook was blank, waiting for words. Amara thought for a moment, then began to write. "Today I sat across from the man who once made me feel invisible and discovered that he could finally see me. Not completely, not perfectly, but he's trying. And maybe that's where change begins, in the trying. 6 months ago, I was just a girl waiting for my mom, leaning against a car because my legs were tired from therapy. I never asked to become a symbol or start a movement. I never wanted my name on protest signs or my face on the news. But here I am. And if my story helps one officer pause before making assumptions, or gives one disabled kid the courage to speak up, or reminds one person to really see the people around them, then maybe it was all worth it. This isn't a happy ending. Officer Daniels still has work to do. The system still needs to change. I still get scared sometimes, but it's a beginning. Messy and imperfect and real. And sometimes beginnings are more important than endings anyway." Amara closed the notebook and looked out her window at the neighborhood below. A patrol car drove slowly past her house. Not Officer Daniels, but one of the newer officers who had attended her youth group's presentation last week. The officer waved as he passed, and after a moment's hesitation, Amara waved back. It was a small gesture, a tiny moment of connection in a complicated world. But as Amara had learned these past 6 months, sometimes the smallest moments contain the seeds of the biggest changes. Her phone buzzed with a message from Zoe. "Youth group meeting at 4. Dayon got the mayor to agree to attend. You ready to blow their minds with our presentation?" Amara smiled, reaching for her crutch. "Ready?" She thought about how far she had come from that frightened girl in the parking lot, how much stronger she had discovered herself to be. "On my way," she texted back, already planning what she would say. Because if there was one thing Amara Jackson had learned through all of this, it was the power of speaking her truth, and the importance of others truly listening.